Thanks so much for the nice welcome, and thanks, Bruce, for the nice words. It's always really pleasant for me to be in a setting like this. I learn as much from what's on your minds as certainly what I'll be talking about tonight. It's also really particularly timely to be part of a lecture series that's focused on leadership and ethics. I think pretty timely if there was ever a time where that's an important discussion. The time's now, and kudos for making it an integral part of your curriculum here. And I think the business community is certainly desirous of all the help it can get. It's an interesting time to be talking about a corporate crisis almost a decade ago. We got more than our share of those that we're talking about today. And one of the reasons actually it's kind of interesting talking about a crisis is that there's always lots of parallels and lessons learned that are relevant as you think about how companies get into a crisis and how they get out. I'm going to spend a little bit of time describing our crisis a few years back and reflect on clearly what we learned as a company along the way. It actually turned out to be a turnaround and a transformation, which is why we're here today to talk about it, because sometimes turnarounds are short-lived. And I'm going to make this as crisp as possible. I know you've got recruiting events at 7 o'clock, and there's nothing more important than that tonight, so I'm very conscious of that. So if I look back on kind of the late 90s, to Bruce's point, this was a company that appeared to be doing really, really well. It was a company that was doing well in the marketplace, was beating competition. The financials appeared to be sound. The growth in the stock was outpacing the market by quite a bit. They had just made a change in leadership, brought in a new CEO, and that apparently had gone well. So there were very few signals that were evident that this was a company in trouble. And then we hit 2000, and what appeared to be with alarming speed. That never is the way a crisis happens. Crises always have pretty deep roots and fairly long reasons why they get into trouble. But you'd look at it and say, by the mid-2000s, this was a company that was already in deep trouble. We did attempt a lot of change, sales organizations, admin organizations that produce, unfortunately, more chaos than results. When you're focused internally, it's an invitation to competition to get stronger. Ours did. So while we were focused on all sorts of internal issues, competition stiffened. That was the time where economies at home and abroad were beginning to get weak, end of the tech bubble. And so we would have reflect back on this and certainly identify a whole set of actions and issues that should have been dealt with earlier. Clearly, with the broad daylight of hindsight, I think you'd characterize as kind of dumb. So this, we characterized it, this was before the movie, The Perfect Storm. That gets used a lot these days, but we were what I would say early adopters of the corporate crisis. We clearly had more than our fair share of issues. The fact is we had regulatory issues, we had liquidity issues, we had business model issues. It really was a fairly complex set of problems. And the cumulative impact of all these issues set the company back. And certainly by May of 2000, we were in deep trouble. I'll define that. Revenues were declining double digit. Our debt had reached about $19 billion. Cash had just about gone to zero. The little cash there was trapped overseas, so we had very little cash that we could tap to keep the place going. As you would imagine, at a time like this, customers are pretty worried. They're not thrilled with the fact that we're not focused on them. Employees were reading about bankruptcy every day in the newspapers, so a number of them were jumping ship, and shareholders, as you mentioned, had seen the value of their investments reduced by half, and it was continuing to head south. So that was May of 2000. That was when I was named President and Chief Operating Officer of Xerox, so this was not the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. This was a time when, quite frankly, the issues looked pretty insurmountable, and most people thought it couldn't be done. So most people were really predicting the demise of the company. And those that thought it was possible certainly didn't believe that an insider was the right answer. I'm a lifer, so they were looking for an outsider to come in with a perspective that could really implement the kind of dramatic change needed to save the company. So one of the biggest stock declines we had was actually on the day that I was named president of Xerox. It was not a big ego booster. But I have to say, one of the great things about knowing the company and loving the company is that I knew we had some incredible assets.